Hi, my name's Tim and you're watching Mr. Tim Tech on YouTube. Every so often I like to try and improve on the programs I'm using on my PC by changing them or upgrading them to other programs, and in this instance we're going to be taking this program and replacing it with this program.
So the alternative I've found, which I've just shown you on screen, is KeePassXC. Now it is actually a fork of KeePass, or KeePass is a fork of KeePassXC, whichever way round it is. And KeePassXC, the website is KeePassXC.org, which you can see in the address bar here, and which I'm on the website at the moment. Is KeePassXC safely stores your passwords and auto-fill them into your favourite apps so you can forget all about them, and is actually open source cross-platform password manager. Now there's different versions of KeePassXC, however it does have a built-in TOTP password generator, unlike KeePass where you have to use a plugin for that. Now with KeePass, not KeePassXC, this is KeePass I'm talking about, you have to have plugins. Now some of those plugins are outdated and are no longer supported or being updated. So for one thing, for security reasons, and also just to modernize KeePass, which it looks a bit outdated with the interface, I decided to change to KeePassXC, and also it was mentioned in one of the comments on my YouTube channel from one of my subscribers that KeePassXC might be a better alternative. So I've been looking into it and I feel that it is actually a better alternative than KeePass. So what we first need to do is download KeePass. Now to do this you can just click the download button here, or you can actually click the download menu option in the website at the top here. Now if you click on the download option at the top, you'll see that there's various options. If you click see more options, you get the Microsoft Store version, the installer version, or you can actually run it as a portable zip download where you can run it from, say, a flash drive, a USB flash drive, so you can run it as a standalone application. Now I did actually run it as a standalone application to test it, and did actually decide that I wanted to move over from KeePass to KeePassXC, so we're now going to download the installer, and I'm using Windows 11 and it's a 64-bit PC, so I've already clicked download, and you'll see that the pop-up window giving you the option to save the installer. I've already downloaded it, as you'll see here, KeePassXC 2.7.6, and it's Win64. So I'll just cancel this save as window, and then we'll just come out of that website, and then we'll go to my downloads folder, and here we have KeePassXC, both the standalone version, which you can see here, compressed zip folder, which you can run from a USB flash drive if you want to test it yourself first, or like me, you can go ahead and run the installer to actually install it on your PC. Before we actually run it, what I suggest you do, if you're converting across from KeePass to KeePassXC like myself, what I would recommend you do is cancel the installer. So before you actually run the installer, what we're going to do is go into our KeePass database folder. As you'll see here, I've got a folder called KeePass database, and within KeePass database I've got the actual KeePass database.kdbx file, which is the database file. So what I would recommend you do is make a copy of your KeePass database file as this can actually be opened in KeePassXC automatically, so you won't have to recreate all of your entries in KeePassXC from KeePass. So what I would recommend you do is, on your drive, create a new folder, and for example in this case we're going to call it KeePassXC database. And then with that folder created, what we'll do is copy our KeePass database.kdbx file from the original KeePass application, and then go into our newly created KeePassXC database folder, and then paste a copy of that KeePass, the original KeePass database, in there, so that we've got original copy of our original KeePass application, and also then a new database which we can open and amend and read and write to in KeePassXC. So now that we've done that, we'll reopen the KeePassXC 2.7.6 Win64 application, and we'll go ahead and run it. So with the open file security warning window up on screen, we'll click run, and then we'll go through the steps to install KeePassXC. So here we have welcome to the KeePassXC setup wizard. We'll click next, and then accept the end user license agreement, which is a GNU general public license. Click next. Then with the destination folder window appears on screen, we have install KeePassXC to C program files KeePassXC, which is fine. If you want a desktop shortcut creating, you can tick the box to create a shortcut on your desktop, and also the box below that, which is automatically ticked, is saying auto start KeePassXC on login. I prefer to manually start KeePassXC as I don't always use it every time I log into the PC, so I'm going to untick that box and click next. Then with the ready to install KeePassXC window on screen, we'll click install, and within about 2 seconds we have completed the KeePassXC startup wizard. Click the finish button to exit the setup wizard, and you'll see that there's a box ticked for launch KeePassXC. So when we click finish, it will automatically launch KeePassXC program. So we can click finish, and with KeePassXC open up on screen, here we have welcome to KeePassXC and its version 2.7.6, which is the latest KeePass version as of recording this video today. So now what we can do is, you will see that it looks similar to the original KeePass, but a much more modern interface. In fact, the layout looks a lot better than what it did in KeePass. KeePass looks quite dated now, to be honest. So what we'll do is click the cog or the gear icon here and go through each setting before we actually open up a database file. So here we have application settings, and we're in the general tab. We're in the general section, and under the basic settings tab we have start only a single instance of KeePassXC, which means you can only run the program in one instance on screen. That is actually ticked, so we'll leave that as default. Automatically launch KeePassXC at system startup, which when you switch your PC on and log into it, it will automatically load the program. And we did actually untick that, if you recall, just a moment ago when we were installing it, so we don't want it to always start up automatically when we log into the PC, as some instances we don't actually need KeePass to run. We have minimize window at application startup, that is unticked, so if you want to keep it minimized in your taskbar down here, you can actually tick that option. There's an option to minimize the window after unlocking database. So once you've unlocked the database, it will minimize the window, which we don't want, so that's unticked. Remember previously used databases. That will remember 5 recent database files in the database menu option. So it will list 5 databases that you've used recently. We'll leave that as default, and the next option down is load previously opened database on startup. So whenever you run the KeePassXC application, it will automatically open the previously used database file. I would recommend doing that, as it saves you having to open the database separately each time. So once you load the application, it will automatically take you straight into that database once you've entered your master password or used the key file, for example. Remember, database key file and security dongles is actually ticked, so we'll leave that as default. Check for updates is actually unticked. As I said, I would manually check for updates. You can actually have it ticked if you want it to automatically update the application and check for application updates when you actually start the application if you so wish. Next option down under the basic settings is on database unlock, show entries that will expire in 3 days. So if you have temporary passwords, for example, or temporary website logins that will expire in 3 days, then it will actually show those entries. I think I will untick that, as I don't use that option anyway. Moving down under the file management section, we have automatically save after every change. So whenever you amend a database entry, it will automatically save it. I choose to sometimes temporarily change entries but don't wish to save them. Say I'm reverting back to a previously used entry details, then I choose not to save the entry so that I can keep the original database with the original saved entry. So if that makes sense, I'll untick that option so that I can manually save the entries by clicking the save database icon. So I'll have it so that I manually save the database. It will actually prompt you when you exit the database without saving it anyway, just to warn you about that there's changes and do you want to save them. So I choose to automatically have that option turned off. However, depending on which you choose, you can actually automatically save it. It's up to you which option you choose. Then the next entry down is automatically save when locking database. That is actually ticked. Again, I will untick that. Automatically save non-data changes when locking database. Again, I will untick that, and automatically reload the database when modified externally. So I'll untick that. The next option down is backup database file before saving. That is unticked by default, as I choose to manually back up my database anyway, and I do actually have a backup schedule which backs up data to a Synology NAS drive, so it does get backed up on a regular schedule basis. I also do back up the database manually, so I have 2 copies of the database file. In fact, I do actually have 3 copies of the database file. One is actually backed up on the NAS, and then another copy is actually backed up on a USB flash drive, and I would recommend having multiple backup copies of your database as well. Underneath that, you'll see that there's the backup destination. This is actually grayed out, and then underneath that you can use alternative saving method, may solve problems with Dropbox, Google Drive, etc. That is unticked by default, so I'll leave it that way, as I'm not backing up databases to any cloud service at all. Entry management is use group icon on entry creation. I'll leave that ticked at the moment because I'm not quite 100% sure what that does, but we'll leave it ticked by default. And then minimize when opening a URL. So once you've opened an entry in your actual database, it will actually minimize KeePass. You can actually have that option ticked if you wish KeePass KeePassXC to be automatically minimized once you've opened an entry. I leave it, to be honest, open in the background, so I'll leave that option unticked, and that's the default option. Hide window when copying to clipboard, again that default option is unticked, so I'll leave that as it is. Then for FavIcon download timeout, that's set to 10 seconds, I'll leave that as it is. So what this is actually it will download icons for each entry, which I'll show you about later in this video, so that it actually provides exact icons next to each entry. For example, YouTube, it will download the actual YouTube logo and put it automatically against the YouTube entry in the database, but I'll show you this later on. So moving down to user interface, we have the language, which is the system default. Toolbar button styles is icon only. So what this will do is, here you'll see the icons which you're moving across. It will have the names underneath those icons, just to explain what each icon does. Show passwords in colour. This option is actually unticked, so I'll leave that as it is. Use monospaced font for notes. I'll leave that as unticked. Minimize instead of app exit. So what this option does is, if you click the X button in the actual application, it won't actually close it, it will actually just minimize the KeePassXC window instead. So I want the X button to actually exit the application, so I'll leave that unticked. The next option down is show a system tray icon. That's actually unticked. I don't actually want a system tray icon to show in the bottom taskbar icon here at the bottom of the screen, so I'll leave that unticked. Then we have auto type. If we move into the auto type tab, here you will see we've got ticked use entry title to match window for global auto type, use entry URL to match window for global auto type, and always ask before performing auto type. And these are all three ticked by default. Under the global auto type shortcut, here in this box, what you can do is, with the press of a key on your keyboard, a shortcut key, it will automatically type in the username and password and credentials for the website. So once you've gone onto the website, you would press the shortcut key on your keyboard and it would auto type in your username, password and so on. So we do want an auto type key for that. In KeePass, I use the F2 key, but I've tried using it in KeePassXC and it doesn't seem to allow you to use any of the function keys as they are. So what I will do is, I use F2 in KeePass, so I'm trying to use F2 again in KeePassXC, but for some reason it won't allow you to do that. So instead I'll press the control key and F2. And as you can see, we now have control F2 remaining in the global auto type shortcut. So in KeePassXC, when I want to auto type an entry in a website, for example, I will now be able to hold down the control key and press F2, and it will auto type the username and password in the box. Remember last typed entry for 15 seconds, we'll leave that default. Auto type start delays 500 milliseconds and auto type type-in delays 25 milliseconds. We'll leave those as default. So moving down to security, under timeout we have clear clipboard after 10 seconds. I think I will have this set to a bit longer, probably 15 seconds, so it will clear the clipboard after 15 seconds, which will give me a little more time to copy and paste usernames and passwords into the relevant boxes. The next option down is lock databases after inactivity of 240 milliseconds. This is grayed out. I'll leave that grayed out. Clear search query after 5 minutes. That's disabled by default. So moving down to convenience, we have enable database quick unlock. That's grayed out by default because we're not using Touch ID or Windows Hello. So I guess if you're using Touch ID or Windows Hello, then that option would not be grayed out. Next option down is lock databases when session is locked or lid is closed. For example, if you're using KeePassXC on a laptop and you close your lid, it will automatically lock the KeePassXC database. And then we also have locked databases after minimizing the window. That's unticked. So for example, if you want to minimize KeePass like that on screen, so it's down on your taskbar, you could have it automatically lock the database. I choose not to have it locked, but if you want to, you can actually tick that option. The next option is require password repeat when it is visible. That's ticked by default, so I'll leave that as is. And hide passwords when editing them, we'll leave that as ticked. Use placeholders for empty password fields, that's unticked. Hide passwords in the entry preview panel, that's actually ticked. Hide TOTP in the entry preview panel, that's actually unticked because I want to be able to see the TOTP numbers ready for entry into the associated website or logging into something that requires TOTP passwords. Hide entry notes by default, that's unticked. So we want to be able to actually see the notes for each website, so we'll leave that as unticked. Move entries to a recycle bin without confirmation, that's actually ticked. I think I would prefer to have confirmation before actually moving to the recycle bin, just to make this an extra level of safety in case I accidentally try and delete an item to the recycle bin. I would prefer second confirmation. Hide double click to copy the username and password entry columns, that's actually unticked by default, so I'll leave that as it is. For privacy, we have used DuckDuckGo services to download website icons. I think I'll tick this as I'd like to have DuckDuckGo service to download website icons. There's a bit more privacy. Next thing down is browser integration. Here this option is disabled, so everything is grayed out below it, and I'll leave that as is, but you could actually use browser integration if you so wish. Next option down is SSH agent, that is actually unticked, so every option is grayed out, so that's unused. And here we have the next final option down, which is key share, and I'm not 100% sure what this option is, but we'll leave it as default with the owner certificate in there and only show warnings and errors ticked. So now that we've gone through all those options, we'll click OK. And here we're now taken back to the open database KeePassXC main window. Now, as you'll see, we changed the option for the icons so that they're now showing with names underneath each icon. And clicking the arrow, as you'll see I just did, has revealed more of the actual icons below. So we now have copy password, copy URL, perform auto type, password generator, and the settings icons. Of course, you could actually make this window bigger so that all the icons fit, but we'll leave KeePassXC as the default minimum size. So now that we've installed KeePass and configured the options, we'll go into Open Database. So what we'll do is browse to our KeePassXC database folder, which we created, and then within there we'll open our KeePass database. So I'll just double click on that to open it, and here we're now presented with the Unlock KeePassXC database. So what I'm going to do is enter my password, and here you'll see that it's now opened the original KeePass database in KeePassXC, and all of our database entries are remaining there. As you will see, we have all of those entries, so you'll now see on screen that KeePass, our original KeePass database this is, has now been opened successfully in KeePassXC, and all of our entries are still shown in there as they did before. So this is great that we don't have to recreate all those entries and import or export them from KeePass into KeePassXC. It will just natively open the database. Now, one thing is with KeePassXC, you don't need to have any plugins for TOTP passwords. So for example, this one with a timer against it means that we have TOTP passwords, and here you will see it's generated a TOTP password, and you'll see that the timer bar is actually going down, and here we have the TOTP password automatically generated, so we don't need to have any plugins in KeePassXC as it natively generates TOTP passwords. So one good thing with KeePassXC is that it's regularly updated, doesn't use plugins, they are natively running in the actual KeePassXC application itself, unlike KeePass where you have to have plugins which could be outdated and no longer supported. So I'll be certainly using KeePassXC in place of KeePass. I hope you found this video useful. I hope you like KeePassXC. But if we go back to the KeePassXC website, you can actually make a donation to them. I will be making a donation certainly, as I've found this program very good, very useful, and a lot better, and at least it's updated and supported rather than KeePass, namely the actual KeePass plugins. I'll also be doing another video soon, so keep a lookout for that, where we'll be using a YubiKey to unlock the KeePassXC database. So keep a lookout for that video as it's coming up very soon, and I'll be showing you how to use a YubiKey with KeePassXC. And here's a bonus tip for you. If you recall, earlier in the video I mentioned about FavIcons that can be downloaded for each entry. Now what it will do is, with me hovering over each entry, as you'll see on screen at the moment, you'll see that there's an icon next to some of those, and they're just generic icons which are available in the actual program itself. Now what you can do is download the icons for each particular website, and it will put those icons for the logos for those websites next to each entry automatically. Now to do this, all you need to do is click on the actual section in the left hand side, and then with right clicking on that, select download all FavIcons. There you will see a window pop up, and it's downloading FavIcons, and you'll see that there's a status message next to each website entry. You'll see that some of them have actually failed with the download. That just means that there's probably not an available icon for that particular entry, but most of them are actually downloaded. As you'll see, the status message is saying OK next to them. So all we need to do is click close, and then now next to all those entries you'll see that there's the actual website logo next to each entry, which has been automatically applied to those entries. Now if you don't have automatic save option enabled in KeePassXC, then all you need to do is click on the save icon at the top, which I'm hovering over now, and then that will apply the icons to the actual KeePass database file. And that's it done. That's how easy it is to use FavIcons. Hope you found this bonus tip useful. Thanks for watching, take care, and more videos coming soon. Bye for now.